today I'm going to be talking a bit about artificial intelligence, and we're going to be going through some really basic concepts about what exactly artificial intelligence is and some lot more components that go into it and how you guys can get involved as well. First and foremost, you guys might be wondering, what exactly is artificial intelligence? You know, we've been hearing that term a lot in media, and it's been a big buzzword that's been used for a lot of different applications. But at its heart, AI is simply when a machine can actually interpret data and it learns how to use this data and apply it to achieve a very specific goal. Now, there's lots of applications of artificial intelligence in our everyday lives, and I'm sure you guys have interacted with a lot of them as well. Some examples of artificial intelligence can include voice assistants. So of course, this includes Siri, Amazon Alexa, Google. When you're asking any of these voice assistants questions or using it to search up different information from the internet, it's using an application of artificial intelligence. Similarly, self-driving cars are also an example of artificial intelligence. Several companies that are really big and involve self-driving cars include Tesla, Waymo, and Ford. And again, this is just simply machines using and learning how to apply data. And then next, you have recommendations. This is also a different application of artificial intelligence. And these are all things that I'm sure that you guys are very familiar with, including Netflix, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. They all provide recommendations to us based on our previous history of what we watched. So it's using that data to inform different types of recommendations that the user might like to see. And similarly, advertisements are also a very big example of artificial intelligence. Companies include AdSense, Instagram ads, and TikToks. These platforms have very curated algorithms that also learn from the data and watch behavior of its users to curate very specific advertisements for them. And on top of this, you have application filters for colleges, jobs, loans, and insurance. So what does that mean? That essentially means that there's an application of AI that helps filter out specific types of things that the companies are looking for in applications, such as maybe specific extracurriculars or just meeting certain GPA requirements for a college application, for example. And then, of course, we have deepfakes, which you guys might have heard about. Now, this is an example of artificial intelligence that maybe has more of a bad consequence to it. So you have it used to create fake news, entertainment, and also used for blackmail. And we'll go a little bit more into that part of artificial intelligence and its drawbacks in a bit. But largely speaking, you can see that there's lots of different examples of AI everywhere, and guaranteed that in regards to any type of technology used, there's going to be some example of AI and artificial intelligence there. So it's good to know about how all these examples are things you're surrounded by. And so here's a really great quote that kind of shows how much AI is actually embedded within our society. And so this is a quote from Andrew Ng, who is a Stanford professor for the CS and EE department, as well as a founder of and CEO of Landing AI, Deep Learning, and Coursera. So this professor has a lot of experience with artificial intelligence in his field. And so I'll just read the quote, which says, "Just as electricity transformed almost everything 100 years ago, today, I actually have a hard time thinking of an industry that I don't think AI will transform in the next several years." And I think this quote is really important because it just goes to show how truly embedded AI is going to be within anything that we do. It's something that a lot of companies and a lot of our society is moving towards because we're trying to find ways in which we can really analyze different patterns and data and figure out how we can learn that to create new predictions and just understand the world around us. So artificial intelligence is just growing in importance and significance as we progress in the future. And so to highlight that a bit more, here is a really interesting graphic about the amount of investments that's been put into AI startups. And you can see here that we have a timeline from 2006 to Q3 in 2021. And you can see that the investments in billions of dollars has reached almost $40 billion for 2021 in terms of the amount of money invested in AI startups. And I think this is a really great piece of evidence that just goes to show how much we are investing into the AI startups and how much people are truly believing in its way to impact the world around us. And yeah, we can go a lot more into AI startups as well. I've had experience in a few of them too. So definitely a growing area and lots of different applications that are being created in this field as well. And so obviously we see that AI is growing rapidly and there's constantly new things being created all the time. And with this pace, there's obviously some concerns and drawbacks that come with the speed at which artificial intelligence technologies are being created. And this brings a new realm and a new into play in which we want to look at AI ethics. And so there are several different things that machine learning scientists and artificial intelligence experts want to keep in mind when they're developing new technologies. One, which is privacy. What kind of data is allowed for a machine to use? And how are you going to sell this data for convenience? So figuring out ways in which you can protect the privacy of the data that you're using for your artificial intelligence is a really big category to consider when you're developing these types of technologies. And of course, I talked briefly about fake media and creating deep fakes as well. How exactly do you discern what exactly is authentic and what makes sense to show to a large group of people? As a creator of this artificial intelligence technology, how do you show that you have responsibility of vetting through all this information? And so these obviously bring very complex questions to the table. And so you, as an artificial intelligence scientist or machine learning engineer, you really have to think about the impacts and consequences of this. And thirdly, as I mentioned before, so many industries are getting involved with artificial intelligence and want to use it to optimize a lot of their practices. Now, this brings to a question, maybe we're using AI a little bit too much. How are we going to completely surrender ourselves to big tech? And if so, what are ways in which we might want to regulate it? And you guys might have seen recently in the news that this is definitely a relevant issue as well for a lot of big tech companies in terms of placing regulations. So that brings to a big question about how much we should actually rely on AI and how much we need to involve like human effort as well. And fourthly, AI systems obviously carry a lot of algorithmic bias. And so by using these algorithms, which inherently use human bias, are they only going to perpetuate problems like discrimination and codify prejudice as well in systems? So we need to figure out a way in which we could reduce that and if not completely eliminate the biases in our models. And thirdly, there's something called the uncanny valley, which is a phenomenon that describes the feeling of like the uncomfortable feeling that people get when machines act too similarly to humans. So with that being said, that brings to a question, are we even comfortable with generalized intelligence coexisting with humans? How would our life change in that sense? And how can we still distinguish machine intelligence from human intelligence? And so obviously these are really big questions that we need to answer, and they're very complex as well. But these are all guiding points as to how we can create more ethical technologies that we can actually use to impact and benefit the people around us. So as someone being involved in artificial intelligence or machine learning, it's really important to kind of consider all these different factors as well. And so, we talked a lot about high level what artificial intelligence is, but now let's actually take some time to look into what we mean by artificial intelligence and talk a little bit more about what actually goes behind it. So we can think of artificial intelligence and AI in two different categories. The first one being narrow AI. And so what exactly is that? Narrow AI is when programs are given data to interpret in order to assist in performing a task with a pretty narrow scope. So we have a very specific problem at hand that we want to solve. And so this means that we're just going to develop AI to help with a specific problem and give it very specific data for the machine to learn on top of that. Now, on the other hand, we have something called general AI. And so this is when a machine achieves human level intelligence that is more indistinguishable from us. So it can perform a variety of different tasks rather than something that's pretty narrow in scope. And so this brings us into a subset of artificial intelligence, which is machine learning. And again, this is something you guys might have heard about a lot as well, and a very big buzzword that is used a lot in different types of companies these days as well. But simply said, machine learning is when computer systems are able to learn and improved automatically by using specific algorithms and statistics to analyze and draw inferences from different patterns and data. So again, machine learning is very data driven. You're using inputs and data that is given to a machine, and then it kind of generates an algorithm and uses an algorithm from that to actually learn about what's happening in this data. And then it uses that data to make some type of prediction or outcome. So I love this diagram and this graphic here because I think it really well says what exactly machine learning is and its pipeline. I think it really breaks down how exactly this process works. So a big thing with machine learning is first gathering and processing your data. I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize this until they work on it, but this is one of the most important steps with machine learning. You know, data is so valuable in our world that we need to figure out a way in which we can gather and process it for it to make sense for a model. So the first step in our pipeline is gathering that data and figuring out a way in which we can make it usable for our machine to use. And so once we've done all that pre-processing and gathering of the data, we then feed it into an algorithm or statistical model. Now that's, a lot of terms right there, but essentially at that core, an algorithm is just a way of solving something. And depending on the type of problem that you might want to solve, there's different algorithms that exist out there for that and different types of statistical models as well. And so once you feed your data into that specific algorithm for your model, your machine then learns on this and then uses that to make either a prediction based on the input data that is given to it, or it'll use the data to identify a pattern within the inputs, or thirdly, it'll use that data to make a decision. So those are three different ways in which a machine learning pipeline could work. And we'll go into a little bit more details and examples of what exactly this means. But I will say this is just one of my favorite diagrams that I use when I explain to students what exactly the ML pipeline is. All right, so largely speaking, that there are three big, almost flavors of machine learning. And these are important concepts that you guys will run into when you go into machine learning as well. The first one being is supervised learning. And so it's exactly what it sounds almost, right? We're going to be supervising our machine as we help it learn through its inputs. And so supervised learning is essentially using labeled examples to predict labels of unknown examples. So say, for example, you want to predict the price of a house. In a supervised learning case, you would give your machine a data set with prices of different houses in a certain state, and then feed that into your model. And then in order to predict the price of a house without a label, it would use all of that data that it has previously to predict that price, right? So this is just the act of using labeled examples to predict something unknown and the label of that as well. So supervising, you're just giving some of that information to your model. And so for unsupervised learning, it's different. So here there's no labels at all that are present. More specifically, where you're going to be looking at underlying patterns in your unlabeled data. There's not a specific type of prediction that will be made, prediction of labels that will be made, but you're rather using that pattern to help make that prediction later. And then thirdly, we have something called reinforcement learning. And so reinforcement learning basically is learning actions based on the state of the world and rewards from previous choices. So here you're looking at data from past choices that you've made in order to inform future choices that you would like to make as well. High level, these are just three important and common machine learning methods that you will most likely run into. There are a lot of things involved with AI, and I think in order to make an AI technology or a system more applicable and beneficial for everyone, lots more people should be involved in it. And artificial intelligence at the end of the day should be for everyone because it affects all of us. And so with that being said, I'd love to share some examples of machine learning for social good that a lot of previous Inspirit AI scholars have worked on, and that you might be working on as well if you join the summer program too. So here we have a lot of different concepts for AI. Here we have artificial intelligence involved with journalism, biology, finance, astronomy, ethics, poetry, and medicine. So like I mentioned, the list goes on and on about what exactly your project could be like. There's so much more to explore with artificial intelligence and its many different applications. And really, there's something for everyone involved in this field. Even if your interest is just not purely artificial intelligence, it touches on so many different parts of our lives and so many different categories that it's just so expansive, and it's always going to keep growing as well.